The games released in 2023 have been nothing short of pretty incredible. I have had a ton of fun playing a lot of the different releases this year. But part of the issue of wanting to play all these games and working full-time and also making content is that sometimes there's games I want to review that I end up not reviewing for one reason or another. Usually it's time or just the will to make the video isn't there. So I decided that I'm going to do something a little interesting. There are a ton of games that I've played this year that I wanted to review but didn't. So today I'm going to do a bit of a review blitz, so to speak. I'm going to go through several games and just rapid fire, give what I like about them, what I didn't like, and do it very quickly. I'm going to try to keep the video moving as much as possible, and I'm not going to dwell on any of the more particular parts of any individual game. It's going to be a little more like kind of how you would see in a top 10 list without any sort of ordering. But enough prattling about what this is going to be. What games am I going to review this time? I've got 6 games that I want to go through today. Those games being Octopath Traveler 2, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, the DLC scenario for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 entitled Future Redeemed, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and lastly, I'm going to do a bit of a review in progress for Final Fantasy XVI. I'm only like 7 to 8 hours in, so this isn't going to be super in-depth. It's just going to be sort of my first thoughts of the game based on those early hours. So I'm going to start with Octopath Traveler 2. So this is a case where I really enjoyed the first Octopath Traveler. It was my favorite game of 2018. And it's something where in a follow-up, I would have liked to see that formula sort of continued and expanded upon, which this game did to a bit of a fault. I'd say in a few places, there's like a few minor gripes I have with things from the original that they kept, but overall, this game is an improvement over the original in virtually every way. The story is significantly better written this time, and with the exception of one traveler, is a lot more connected. It doesn't feel like just 8 disparate stories that are woven together at the end. It feels like it's building to something the entire time. In terms of combat, it's pretty much the same, but it adds a few new wrinkles that make it kind of interesting, and also allow you to break the game quite a bit, although maybe not to the same extent that you were able to with the last game. The game also varies up a lot of different aspects of the game, such as allowing you to have multiple characters in the same job at the same time, which is super helpful, and I'm really glad we have this time around, even if some of the duplicate licenses are a little difficult to get. The game also has some pretty interesting boss fights that have their own unique gimmicks that you have to work around, which is something that also the last game didn't really have. They sort of all were just HP sponges, whereas this time, they still kind of are, but there's usually still a few unique twists that you can play around in each of the individual fights, especially in the final fights of each of the characters' respective chapters. But overall, if you liked the first Octopath Traveler, this game improves upon that game in virtually every way, and if you didn't, then this game probably will not be for you, because it sticks to that original formula pretty consistently. Alright, moving on to Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. So Kirby has kind of always been my comfort game, so to speak. It's a case of where the games are easy, and that's sort of what draws me to them. It's something that I don't have to think about while I'm playing. It was a pretty traditional 2D Kirby experience. Honestly, there really isn't too much to say about this game other than it looks really nice, plays really well, and is just a pretty fun time if you need something short to just get through a vacation with, which is what I did. I basically use this as my travel game, which is why I am borrowing all the footage for this, because this is the only one of these games that I don't have any footage that I recorded myself. Where the game truly shines, though, is in its new epilogue scenario, which I'm not going to talk too much about here, but it is a really cool way to add additional things to do in the game, and also provides a fairly decent challenge, especially compared to the main campaign, which is always appreciated for endgame content. Alright, next up is the big one. We're going to talk about Future Redeemed. So, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was my favorite game of last year. It is absolutely incredible, and Future Redeemed somehow manages to make that game even better in my eyes. This game is the one that finally starts to help it feel a little bit more connected to the first 2 games. Namely, in a lot of the lore aspects that the developers sort of hinted were a thing, but weren't quite explaining. Gameplay-wise, it plays pretty similar to the base game with some more limitations. You don't have the full extent of customization that you do in the base game, which is the same way that Torna was for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, so no real surprises there. Some things it does better than Torna is it's paced a lot better. You don't have all these mandatory side quests and filler elements. Instead, side questing and exploration gives you the tools necessary to develop your characters further. So you're still encouraged to do those things, but you can still streamline the game if you so desire, and you're up for that type of challenge. Overall, where this game really shines is a lot of the character interactions. Seeing direct interaction between Shulk and Rex was the main draw for this, and I feel like they completely knocked it out of the park with both of their characters, and it seems like in both cases they were a natural progression from their original games. Overall, if you're a Xenoblade fan, you have to pick up this game, and it is absolutely worth your time to play through it. Alright, the first non-Nintendo game on this list, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So, it's pretty clear at this point that I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan on top of liking Pokemon, so this was very natural that I had to pick it up. So, I got the first game used a couple months after it came out, and I never really finished it. And part of that mainly was just because I'm not the biggest fan of the Soulsborne genre. Eventually, earlier this year, I picked it up, and just powered through it on a lower difficulty setting, and I absolutely loved it. It was a fantastic game, and this game just takes that and improves upon it in every way. Similar to Octopath Traveler 2, it takes what that first game already did well and just continues to build on it. The thing that I think draws me to these games is that the combat is unbelievably fun. I get a little too much pleasure out of killing stormtroopers, but when the combat's that good, I don't feel that bad. Story-wise, this game picks up pretty well from the previous game and really takes it in a place that I didn't expect it to go, but also it leaves me interested to see where this trilogy will conclude in the next game. Overall, if you're a Star Wars fan or like Souls games, this game and its predecessor are both ones that I would highly, highly recommend. Alright, it's time for the big one. The game that is probably going to win Game of the Year, it's currently my number one, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So, probably the most anticipated game for a good while, especially ever since they dropped that trailer in, 2019, and it just now came out. It's not quite the weight of Breath of the Wild, but it's still quite a while. Still better than Metroid Prime 4, though. Either way, I keep repeating myself for some reason, it takes what Breath of the Wild did and just builds on it. This time, doing some fairly interesting things. The big new draw to this game is that of the fuse system and the build ability. Both of these do a lot to create some really creative puzzle solving. In terms of story, I think it's better than Breath of the Wild, but it's still not quite what we've gotten from the older Zeldas. But I think where this game truly shines is its exploration. Many people were kind of concerned initially when it was first announced that it was going to use basically the same map as the original game, but honestly, that was because they were hiding quite a bit from us from the trailers. This game features not just the original overworld, but 2 additional new overworlds to explore. That being the sky and the depths. The former of which being the exact same size as Hyrule and having a completely different feel and just mode of exploration. And even with the case of the original overworld, it's still very interesting to see all of the things that have changed in the original Hyrule. Some of the other things this game has done really well is helping respond to some of the criticisms about the Divine Beasts. This game's dungeons that replace the Divine Beasts are significantly more varied in their appearance, and I feel a lot more interesting. Although, some of them do feel a little simple, and some of the game's mechanics do break them a little too much. They don't quite have that same traditional Zelda dungeon feel, and I don't know if we're ever going to really get that again with the current formula. However, though, the bosses for these dungeons are where they really shine, being completely unique and just, with a few exceptions, pretty fun to fight. Overall, it is just Breath of the Wild plus more, and it is the most fun I've had playing a Zelda game to date, and I am super satisfied with it. And last but certainly not least is my review in progress for Final Fantasy XVI. So this game seems to be mired with controversy, namely that it's been pushing the series towards a more action-oriented gameplay style, although to be fair, 15 was the one that really started this. However, for the sake of this review, I'm going to disregard all of that and just review the game as I see it. So the first thing is I'm going to start with the story, because that's the main draw of most Final Fantasy games. Within the first 15 to 30 minutes, I was already hooked. I really want to see where this story goes and learn all I can about this world. I have a feeling it's going to do that typical Final Fantasy thing and completely abandon the more complex politics for a very simple kill god type ending. Regardless of that, I am still very interested to see where it goes up to that point. And moving on to the combat has taken a little while to grow on me. I've just now gotten to the point where I feel like I'm starting to get it. It's starting to click with me, and it's starting to give me more and more options where it starts to feel rewarding. Early on, I felt a little stiff. I guess part of that might be the expectation that we were told it was supposed to be like Devil May Cry combat, and it didn't feel as fluid as games like that or Bayonetta typically feel. So I think that is part of where that feeling was for me, but it's starting to open up more. I'm starting to see more options, and I am really excited to see where the combat goes from there. The major thing that has been really blowing my mind is the boss fights. The way in which this game just keeps upping the ante with boss fights. Each one seems to be more grand than the next, and I don't know how this game is going to sustain that momentum through the entire journey, because I could see some really crazy shit by the end at the rate this is going. Either way, though, I am really intrigued to finish this game and see where the story goes, and hopefully I will be able to go through this game proper in the next sort of Review Blitz style video. And that's all the reviews for now. I am pretty satisfied with this format. I am hoping that I can do something with this and, sort of improve this format just to sort of get more content out on a more regular basis, because this is fairly low effort to make. I just give my very basic thoughts about the games with no real structure other than the order of the games. Hopefully there's other ideas of things I can do. I can talk about upcoming releases that I'm excited for. I could talk about, older games that I'm revisiting, or just all sorts of stuff. Just throw your ideas out there for maybe smaller type videos that you would like to see, just to sort of get the algorithm churning and keep my creative momentum going between larger projects. But with all of that, I will see you guys in the next video.